Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new edition of GameTales, a show where we talk about a great number of things for an hour or so and then probably go to sleep because we're recording this kind of late at night usually. Today's topic is one that may be of interest to you all, but if you really want to get in early on it, you should pre-order this show. What do you think, Stephen? Should people pre-order this show?
Yes, I think they should, especially by means of your Patreon.
You can pre-order the show, yeah.
Yeah, I still think you need a special Patreon tier for GameTales, for suggestion of GameTales subjects.
Probably we didn't actually think we'd get to $100, so that's why that was never there.
We'll see about that. Maybe for next year.
Yeah, we should add one with the ability to pre-order an episode of GameTales and have it shipped to you before it is made.
Well, or at least before it's public.
No, before it's made.
Before it's made, that's
because it ties into today's subject. Would you like to tell them, please?
Yeah, then they're just gonna get a bunch of copy paste of our Discord discussions. Yes, today, good morning, afternoon, dear listeners. Today we are talking about whether or not you should pre-order video games. Spoiler alert, you shouldn't.
Now, there is one exception that I think is okay when it comes to pre-ordering video games. Many years ago, when I was 23, there's actually a song about that, but never mind.
This is the way back. Okay.
There was 6 Human Revolution was released, and it was on pre-order on a local gaming website, the game shop, and it had a massive discount for the pre-order. Well, the game itself was discounted because at that time Square Enix sold the games in Romania at a price we could afford. And we're talking, the game was with the pre-order bonus, that is the lower price. It was around $15 new.
That is a decent price.
Yeah. That is one of the only reasons I would think to pre-order a game.
Well, the thing is, Unicom, so we were inspired partially to talk about this due to the what can only be described as a somewhat of an asset flip / cluster fudge.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to keep it clean of Fallout 76. Although this is just the last example, the last in a long line of problematic games that have showcased and spotlighted the problem of pre-ordering. But looking into the history of pre-orders for this video, just as it is with most other things, when it started, it was a good thing. It was a positive thing. Pre-ordering video games started back when video games actually had to be printed on discs, on CDs. So they were exclusively physical media. And the idea of pre-orders basically started with large retailers such as Amazon and GameStop, most likely, because when games were released and they were a hit, they would run out of stock really fast, and then everyone else who wanted to purchase and play the game was basically annoyed, which is what would happen. So they started doing the pre-order thing as a means of telling the distributors or whoever, the developers, the distributors, to give them a better idea of how many copies they should actually print and send them.
Yep.
And in the way back when, pre-orders basically meant you just put in, I don't know, 10, 15%, 20% of the value of the finished value of the game. And then when release came around, you went, paid the rest, got your game. Everyone was happy. And then, capitalism happened.
Yeah, I mean, sure.
Because, again, I'm with you. Pre-ordering should only happen if you actually get the thing at a discount. But unfortunately, what happened in reality is developers, but I don't think actually the developers, more like the whoever is in charge of the finances, decided, well, how about we don't release the actual full game when we say we do, and we start cutting off a mission here, an expansion there,
and give it as a pre-order bonus.
Yeah, and give it as a pre-order bonus. Day one DLC, or some special skin pack, or that sort of stuff. And the problem is that they did that, and people kept on pre-ordering that.
Because it gave people an incentive to pre-order, even though the incentive was something that should have been in the game for the get-go.
Exactly, and all signs point to things that were in the game to begin with.
A great example of this, if I may, is Mass Effect 3's Day 1 DLC. A playable character from the species that previously fought the Reapers, the ones that you kept finding traces of, the ancient ones, if you will, and for some reason that wasn't considered as being part of the base game, since having an alien from an ancient civilization there in your party from the get-go won't affect the story at all. It won't give you any sort of insight into what's happening, will it? No. Spoiler, it kind of did.
So, yeah, and this Fallout 76 debacle is just like I said, it's just the latest in a long line of issues.
Oh,
now,
boy. Yep.
Now, it's not, Fallout 76 isn't bad because of the pre-order. Don't get us wrong. It's just the sense that a lot of people who pre-ordered it, especially online, weren't able to get a refund because the game is shite. Especially people who pre-ordered it from GameStop. There's a very funny video with
the man that goes ballistic. Yeah.
Yes, which you should be playing. Which you should play as we talk about it. So what that guy did is an a-hole. That's true, but I'm just saying, pre-ordering is damaging the industry. It's not helping the gaming industry. It's making it. I don't know if it's arguably. I wouldn't think it's arguably. It's making it worse in the AAA bracket.
It basically means that it doesn't matter if the game is good or not. They already bought it a year before release.
Exactly, and this spins us into something different because you hit on a very sensitive subject there. You said it doesn't matter if the game is good or not, and that's why the demo died as well.
Oh yeah. I think there was a statistic a while ago that demos may actually have reduced game sales, because if a demo shows the game as being what it is and the game isn't all that good, then the demo is not going to sell the game.
Obviously. And again, once they saw that pre-orders work and that's basically a guaranteed sale they can show to their shareholders, that's when they decided, well, maybe we shouldn't actually show them the game, because let's just market it very well.
Yeah, and when you say not show them the game, we don't mean just demos. I mean outright lie about what the game is.
Yes, I believe the Colonial Marines fiasco had the demo, but that had nothing to do with the game.
Yeah, and the same thing was kind of true about No Man's Sky as well. The game had multiplayer promised. They said, "Oh yeah, the odds of two people meeting are so slim, but it's there. You can definitely play with your friends. It's there." And it was supposed to be there because people found that on the back of the box there was a sticker over the bit that said multiplayer, and it was covered over because it wasn't the final version of the game. It was supposed to be there at one point, but it wasn't.
It was just player.
Yeah. It was very funny to see that at one point two players actually found the same planet. They were in the game at the same time. They were looking at the same place, and they couldn't see each other because there was no actual multiplayer there. There was no connectivity. There was nothing there.
That was yes. Yet again, one more recent example of this.
Thankfully,
Although,
the developers of No Man's Sky did eventually add that in. I mean, it seems like that they have shame, so they actually put in the work, which is
yes,
something
which
other
is
developers won't do.
which is surprising. But it's good that apparently the game now, after what, a year, something, maybe
Uh,
more.
2 years. It wasn't actually 2015.
Sorry about that. Yeah, but I think it was after about a year, it was actually more playable, and now it's way closer to what they initially pitched.
Mhm.
But that still means they basically the game should have been out 2 years later.
Oh yeah, but well, there was a big push from Sony back then as well because Sony was handling the publishing side of it, even though this was an indie game. Sony had a lot of money to promote it. I mean, it got the main developer, I forget his name from Hello Games. He got him on the late night show with Stephen Colbert. Nobody has money to do that. Nobody.
That's true. That's true.
I mean, there's only been one other game developer in the Colbert Show, and that was Will Wright with Spore, which is kind of another example of this pre-order culture thing. Because Spore itself was promised as being something, and they showed the components of the game at one point that were not there. They were cut out, and not even added back.
That was a very Peter Molyneux type of situation.
Yeah.
And another thing. So the main thing that annoys me a lot about pre-ordering is that it's an insidious sort of thing that kind of uses human psychology against them and for the producer, for the people making the money, because the moment in which you put your money down on something, then you feel, and you literally are invested in the game. You're somehow invested in, psychologically speaking, you're invested in the success of that product, whatever it is. And that makes it that much more problematic, because let's say when people who pre-ordered games will basically get to be either totally disappointed with what happened if the game is very bad, or then they will try to do all of these mental gymnastics to explain how the game is actually great.
Yeah.
Just because they invested the money initially, not necessarily not the money investment, but they put the money down, they felt invested, and it's that whole cognitive dissonance thing. They can't be wrong, and especially if they put money down. No, it's absurd.
Yeah, I've seen that so many times that it becomes just so annoying.
It's it's something. It's devious. It's a devious. Granted, this is what marketing is all about, more or less. But when it comes to pre-order, there's just an extra cherry on the top of the nasty cake that it is. So
thankfully, some people actually realized at one point that the game they pre-ordered may not be that good, and they do have a moment of realization, and they accept that okay, maybe they were mistaken with pre-ordering it and trying to defend it because their arguments didn't hold merit, and the game really isn't worth their time. And there's a beautiful Gmod short video that you can find on YouTube about Electronic Arts, I believe, and pre-ordering stuff, where a character will realize, oh my god, this game's horrible, and they say it's horrible, it's terrible, it's terrible, it's horrible, and then behind them an EA exec or an exec from a gaming company pulls out the sequel to the game and says pre-order it now, and the character just flies towards them to pre-order it, because they tend to do that again, even though they realize at one point that maybe pre-ordering was a mistake.
Yeah, and again, I don't understand exactly why that happens, because especially I mean, I don't know about EA for sure, but I know probably EA does this as well, but I know for certain that Ubisoft, the way in which they make, like, I don't know how many 10 variations of the same game bundle. Like it's gonna be, they sell you the basic game, then they sell you the basic game plus some stuff, then they sell you the basic game plus plus, then the huge box with not great looking figurine and some other I don't know, art books, that sort of stuff.
The question is, do all those actually contain the game? Because some made by Bethesda don't contain the game.
Yes, that's on top of it, on top of the fact that some of them don't contain the game. But the idea is those things don't, I mean, maybe for some collectors, those things might be interesting. Maybe if you're like an insane super fan of something, those might make sense. But if you look at them, they're really not. It's really not worth the money to pre-order the game.
Yeah, the pre-order, no, but having extra editions with different stuff in them is kind of nice. I mean, I have the deluxe edition of Assassin's Creed Revelations, and it comes with a very beautiful art book with the art of the game, and it comes with the Destiny's Embers movie, which is basically the last portion of Ezio's story. It does come with a lot of stuff in it, and I didn't pre-order it. I got it for, I think it was $8. It was on sale. I got it really cheap. It's a beautiful thing, and a lot of games tend to have really complicated region-based specific collector's editions. Just look up all the collector's editions that The Witcher 1 had. You will go insane looking all of them up, because there's like 50, not 50, I'm exaggerating, but there's at least 7 of them.
Mm-hmm, okay.
With different stuff in them. And I think only the Polish one had all the stuff.
I mean, if the things are really well made, and again, if you're interested in that stuff, then sure. But otherwise, I don't know. I actually think most of those adjacent products aren't. I think they're more or less made as an afterthought, just so that they can.
Sometimes they are, but sometimes they may have some like sentimental value, as you said, for collectors especially, and they will often be made in limited quantities. And then, if you really want them, pre-ordering is probably the only way to actually get them, because they will fly off the shelves instantly and then be sold at a marked up price on eBay or other stuff. Oh, there's a good example of this. And there was a complete collection of all Heroes of Might and Magic games flying around the same game stores in Romania that I found those 6 very cheaply back then. But this one cost like an arm and a leg. And it turns out it was being sold before it was actually supposed to be on sale. And when it did go on proper sale, it didn't cost an arm and a leg. But at the beginning it was.
Okay.
Only
on the other hand,
when it actually went on sale, they like had 2 copies left because everybody else bought the big one.
Shit.
Expensive.
The thing is, so physical media notwithstanding, which let's just say you're paying money and at least you have something that you have a physical piece of something.
Yeah, you have the assurance that you're gonna get your game.
That has if there's a book, if there's a figurine, even if it's not great or whatever the hell, at least those physical objects have inherent value in and of themselves.
Yeah, and there's also the culture of the midnight release, where everybody just goes to the store at midnight and maybe they camp out. But it's not just because they're fanatics about the game. It's more about the connecting with other people at that event and participating in the event itself. It's a show unto itself. It's sort of like a mini E3, but with just one game and a bunch of people.
Midnight releases you don't need pre-orders for midnight releases.
No, but you are assured that you have the game reserved for you. So you're not going there for nothing. Well, yes, you're going there to talk to people too as well.
But the problem gets more annoying from my perspective is when you're actually what they've started doing a while back is to actually offer exclusive in-game content depending on depending on the
retailer that's
the retailer that sells it. So basically, if you actually want the complete experience of the game, technically speaking, you will have to buy 3 or 4 versions of the same game.
Yeah, that is absolutely stupid.
And that's really that is a very unclean sort of marketing tactic.
Yeah, it doesn't come from the developer or the publisher. It's because the game stores have the games industry by the shirt and curlies. I would have said balls, but I actually said it already. Okay, YouTube's gonna flag this again. No problem.
Yep.
There's an interview with Robert Surtek, the founder of Surtek, the ancient video game publisher that made Wizardry back in the day, where he says exactly why he stopped making video games, why he closed down the company. It's because the game stores became the controlling factor of marketing in video games. They would not sell your games unless you agreed to their terms for marketing. So if they wanted a giant statue of Dovahkiin in their store, you would make their statue for them. Otherwise, they would not sell your game. Or if they would select 3 copies and put them on the shelf somewhere in the back that nobody sees it.
And again, that's when physical media was important and was the only thing. But nowadays, we're just talking sometimes about. I mean, in general, we're talking about digital downloads.
Yeah. Pre-ordering digital stuff is kind of a nonsense thing because there's really no advantage to it unless maybe you get it earlier. Because if you get it on release day, you're not going to be able to download it any faster than everybody else if the server crashes, which it often does.
Yeah, and let's talk about that getting it earlier thing. So
you're getting it minus the day 1 patch that makes it playable.
Taking it back to Fallout 76, what happened with that? So pre-ordering the game allowed you access to the beta of the game. Basically, what Bethesda did is they said, I mean, they didn't say this, but normally in the older times, developers kind of had to beta test their own stuff and release a game that was at least playable from start to finish, if not actually offer a good experience while doing so. But what they did is, oh, no, we're not going to do like an open beta, which is what a lot of developers do, especially when it comes to online and multiplayer games. Oh, no. Well, actually, you, the public, our fans, the community, you actually have to pay us in order for you again to test our game.
And it's not even what you would call an actual beta. That's because it was a couple of weeks before release. The game was already on discs. It was already headed to stores. A beta would have taken place months before that. An actual beta. This was a demo. You were paying for the demo.
Basically, yeah. Because immediately after that, there was a patch that was 57 gigs or something.
Yeah, it was. They basically reinstalled the game.
They basically had to reinstall the game, notwithstanding the bug that actually made you delete the game. So that's the thing that annoyed me the most, especially when it came to Bethesda's approach with Fallout 76.
And it's not just that they wanted people to test the game as they bought it. They had bugs in Fallout 76 that were solved in Fallout 4.
Well, they weren't. The thing is, those bugs...
the community did.
Exactly. Those bugs were fixed by the community, and the devs didn't give a shit about it.
Yeah. Happy days.
They just didn't fix it, and that's why a lot of internet reviewers talk about Fallout 76 as basically a Fallout 4 asset flip. And it's just a shame because I was kind of optimistic. I still think it might actually, down the road, if they don't decide to pull the plug early, which I don't know what's going to happen,
I don't think they will. They stuck it through with The Elder Scrolls Online, which was released in an even, well, I wouldn't say sorry to say, but a worse game than it is now. Much worse game. And it's doing okay.
Yeah, so I still think, I hope that in like a year's time or something like that, the Fallout 76 will be arguably a better game, will be a better experience. It should be, definitely. So I still think it has the potential. There's still potential there. The fact that they went with the whole survival aspect to it, they might have been a bit late to that particular party.
Yeah, especially because as some people have pointed out in some reviews, it's not that hard to survive because there's stuff everywhere.
Well, that can be worked on, balance-wise. But I'm just saying, like, in general, I still enjoy the idea of theoretically playing a Fallout game with some friends, on the other hand. But surely I'm gonna wait until it's on sale again. But yeah, that whole paying to test it for us, no.
That is... that is emblematic of the tech industry in general these days. The biggest example possible for this, if I may, is Microsoft. Microsoft was worth, like 2 weeks ago, was worth more than Apple, over $800 billion. They fired their systematic testing people. They had like 400 people that they fired. They tested Windows. They made sure it worked. Now that they don't have that department anymore, things that are bad are happening. Very bad things. The October update, which was supposed to be released in October, was delayed for November because it deleted files. And now some people still haven't got it, me included, because it still has some issues that need to be worked out. And this is not a free product. You could have got it as a free upgrade, but it is a really... expensive thing that people depend on for its stability.
I know, and I'm unfortunately I am quite aware of that. But I don't understand why people fell for it. For Fallout. I mean, I love the game. I love the franchise. You've hopefully listened to the episodes, to the GameTales episodes we did, especially for the Fallout franchise during the whole of October. We are very involved and invested in the franchise, and have been ever since the first one was released. But even so, this was an online multiplayer type game. You should have waited and see what's what.
The whole pre-order culture has been around for so long that people just take it at face value and don't really think too much into it. They just pre-order things because, well, they want to have them. And it didn't really sink in the fact that it's always online. And well, I think the term used that you're never going to see a server when you log into the game unless it disconnects. And then you're not going to see any servers. And it probably didn't register to people that they're going to have those kinds of problems, things you would have thought they would have worked out, because Bethesda has an MMO, and to the MMO's credit, there were never server issues. It always worked. It's just that it was incredibly a 2008 era WoW clone instead of an Elder Scrolls game.
Yeah, and that was the other thing, that they didn't work enough to make it a very Fallout-y type experience.
Yeah, I sort of clocked out a bit when I saw that weapons had level requirements.
Yeah, that's neither here nor there. It's not necessarily related to our subject.
Now, I would have understood if it had skill requirements, you needed certain perk cards to use them. Yeah, okay, I would have gotten that. But the level, really?
Yeah. It wasn't, and I don't understand. I'm not sure what we can do to fix this, or what we can try to do, because we are very small fish. We're like krill in the overall pond of gaming related news and reviews and that sort of stuff. So I don't know how much influence we can actually have related to this, but just don't pre-order games in general.
Or hardware. Don't pre-order hardware either. It's very important that you don't, because hardware tends to have a lot more faults in it at launch day that you may not be aware of.
That makes a lot of sense.
A game may not work. A defective motherboard may set your house on fire.
That hits a bit close to home.
Sorry.
The thing is, when it comes to hardware, it's especially tech IT stuff. I have the policy of waiting for the second generation.
That is a good one to have.
Of whatever it is. The only time that I've been first adopter has been with the Ryzen chips.
And it sort of turned out that you should have probably waited for a second gen.
Well, not necessarily. I don't know. I don't think hopefully the processor isn't the problem.
But the part of the ecosystem was the motherboard as well.
Yeah, I know. It could have just been. It could just have been that I got a lemon. That I got a fluky.
Yeah, it's possible.
A fluky motherboard. With the processor overall, I don't have any issues. I don't plan on changing it anytime soon either. But when it comes to tech in general, IT stuff, even with the Ryzen, I waited at least I think half a year for all of the initial bugs, which there were many of,
especially with the memory speed.
Exactly. Also relating to how well the BIOSes of the various motherboard producers knew how to make use of the Zen architecture and whatnot.
Yeah, and Windows itself not knowing that it has so many threads at its disposal.
Yeah, so I did actually wait for a while for that to happen. I wasn't like initial, yes, must have this, and have it not work for a bunch of months properly at least. But I think you have some other more poignant examples of hardware.
Yeah, let's take the example of the new RTX series of video cards from NVIDIA.
Oh yeah, it's been a bit of a common subject in our shows.
Yeah, I'm gonna look at YouTube a bit for a second to see if the hardware unboxed stress test that is currently trying to fry its 2080 Ti, if it has succeeded. Because they seem to have the habit of blowing up. Currently, it's think maybe 5 hours into the test, and it hasn't blown up yet. But some of them start to die at 8 hours of stress test, and the stress test is just running Uni Engine Valley as a test, and it's running at 86 degrees already. My God, that is a hot card. Woo-hoo.
That is holy shit. That's insanely hot.
And thankfully, the CPU seems to be running at a cool 50. That's a huge temperature difference. But apart from the fact that the card, this particular card, has shown some tendency in some cases to die for some reason. It may just be a lot of them, like a sample of them was defective or something. Apart from that, there is no reason to buy them. There's only one game on the market now that supports ray tracing, and that is Battlefield 5. And to be fair, ray tracing in it looks superb, and you can do amazing things like see the enemy behind you from a reflection. That is something you could not do in any game, period.
That is cool, yeah.
Because up until now, we used, in most modern games, we use screen space reflections, meaning that the reflection we're seeing was stuff that you were already seeing on the screen. So if you move your head down in the game, for example, to cut off a mountain out of your field of view, that mountain would not be reflected in the water below it anymore because it wasn't on the screen anymore. Or there was one situation where I think it was in Dragon Quest or something like that. Yeah, I think Dragon Quest. The reflections were exactly what you were seeing on the screen. So if your character was looking at a mirror, they would be seeing like the back of their head. Because it was showing exactly what was on the screen. And the back of the character's head was on the screen. But there are no other games that use ray tracing at all. And the video cards themselves, they don't really have a power boost compared to the previous generation. They cost pretty much the same as the cards they're replacing and offer really not that much value extra. Unless you're doing video encoding, because the new NVEC codec in there is actually better.
Sure, but I don't know if even if you do video encoding a lot, I don't know if the upgrade is that suggestible just now.
No, it's not. It absolutely isn't.
Just for that, maybe a couple of percent.
Because I mean, if you're gonna buy a high-end video card like this one, you probably already have a CPU that has more than 4 cores, and you have more than 4 cores, you can do software encoding, X264, that can yield as good of results, even better than the hardware encoding. It does eat up CPU resources, but it does it in very, very good detail.
So the RTX series of cards is definitely one example in which you should not only just maybe wait for the second series of them, but you're more like it's better to wait just because there is nothing to support them.
Yeah, and still, they were pre-ordered to hell and back. They were, whoa, that NVIDIA got a lot of money from them.
I'm sure they did, but it's always a problem with these things, because if the product is bad, then the backlash can cost you a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that we've kind of sort of saw. This is for our listeners a bit of inside baseball. We tend to keep ever since we made that BlizzCon episode. Been keeping an eye on what's been happening with Activision Blizzard.
Mm-hmm.
And ever since they announced Diablo Immortal, their stock value in general went down by around $12.5 billion.
That's billion with your pinky finger at the end of your mouth.
That is an insane amount of money. It's so much money that, I mean, even if the Chinese revenue is insanely positive, it's gonna be kind of hard to be 12 billion worth of revenue from China.
Well, actually, this was more of a scare based on the negative reaction of the public to the announcement of the game, and investors, they tend to get scared and confused quite easily. I mean, when Pokemon Go came out, Nintendo's stock prices rose a lot because people were buying their stock because of Pokemon Go. Mm-hmm. Nintendo did not make Pokemon Go, was not publishing it, and had barely any connection to it financially.
Yep.
So investors are not necessarily the broadest people, but they have money.
I'm not saying, I'm not saying it's a right or correct. I'm just saying this is what happens. I'm not saying the fact that it shouldn't because, or it does because many investors are in it just to make money. No, I'm just saying this is what happens.
Yep.
This is what a backlash can do. Yeah, if you have a really bad product.
Thing is, when the game is going to be released in China, it's going to drive Activision Blizzard over $100 billion in stock value. I'm certain of it.
Probably, we'll see about that. But the idea is, at least in the short term, ever since that happened, I don't think Activision Blizzard has ever seen a dip.
Actually, I'm gonna check to see if they ever had a big dip this big.
This isn't even a dip. This is quite massive.
Let's see, 1 year, 5 year. Nope.
I don't think
they haven't had a dip this big in the last 5 years.
Exactly. So this is what I mean. So the backlash was so big that it actually hurt one of the largest. It doesn't matter that, at least for the shareholders, it doesn't matter the fact that technically speaking, they're still making money. All of their games are still generating revenue, are still generating profit. But the problem is they're not making as much money as they could. So that's interesting. That's interesting to see if it was actually if the reason was actually due to backlash, due to bad products, or it's just a general dip in the market because, as you've mentioned, both Microsoft and I think Apple as well been having some finance.
Apple and Amazon lost around 200 billion. Apple lost it because it hasn't sold as many phones and it stopped announcing the number of products it actually sells because their investors didn't get that, okay, we sold less of them, fewer of them, pardon, but they sold them at a price so high they made more profit. So there's more money, but they sold less product. And that confused people a bit. Also, there has been, I think that in Activision's case, Destiny also sort of underperformed Destiny 2, and they did have a the investor meeting. Like, I'm not sure if it was around the time of BlizzCon, but it was somewhere in that area. Though the dip is definitely because of Diablo Immortal, because it was like on the same day that the drop started.
Oh yeah, the dip is definitely because of that. What I was wanting to say is basically, I'm curious if it will maintain for any long period of time, or what it would take for it to jump back up.
Well, the market I think is closed at this time, but it's not really recovered in the past week.
I don't think it will that much. Not necessarily this month. We'll see. They need to announce something in order for. They need some good press, basically.
Well, they're going to get it early next year. Actually, next month with the Warcraft 3 and the WoW Classic thing.
We'll see. It depends when those launch and the level of quality with which they launch. Although, granted, it's Blizzard, so they still test their stuff, hopefully.
Yeah, well, actually, they kind of didn't with Diablo 3 because it just stopped working on Radeon cards in Act 2.
Okay, I don't remember that.
The image just froze at one point in the desert, and that was never fixed. Actually, I think it was fixed like 2 or 3 years after the fact.
Whoa, really? Took that long?
Yes, it was a known issue for a while. So like I played it in like 2016, I think. No, 2015, and the game was out for 2 years at that point.
I get you. Okay, well, granted, Warcraft 3, different experience than Warcraft 3 Reforged. They're going to be a different thing than what they tried to do initially with Diablo 3. But I think they do need to. They're going to need to actually release news about some Diablo 4 type thing. That
there's been a lot of murmurs about it. Also about them having employees sleeping in cars because they are not paid enough.
Yeah, it's not great. It's not sounding great. Blizzard, I think Activision Blizzard is gonna stray way more from what Blizzard used to be in the coming future.
Yeah, well, to be fair, I think they used to sleep in their cars back then as well, but it was more because they were too tired to go back home.
I don't know, man. We'll wait and see. But it's not. I'm still afraid of whatever constant monetization mechanic they'll implement in Diablo 4, because they will.
Yeah, they're going to have to at this point.
There's no way that doesn't happen somehow. So if it's the best idea would be if it, like skins and stuff. Or I don't know, pets that don't do anything like WoW.
They already have those.
Okay.
They may try doing the auction house again. There's the concept of the I think it was called immersion or exposure, exposure something something. I ran across it again because I was looking at one of my old shows, the new shows from back in the day, and at one point there was a news piece about a developer of Call of Duty saying that the best way to get people to accept a thing is to bombard them with that thing until they see it every day of their lives constantly, so it doesn't even register to them that that thing is not there. And he was saying this in relation to Call of Duty, and also mentioned that that is a good way to get people adjusted to the idea of invading Iraq.
Yeah, that is it's basically it's basically messaging it and repeating the same message over and over again. That's how that works.
And that's how we've gotten online single player games with online only components.
Oh, the games as service shtick.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The DRM everywhere, the loot boxes, that's how we got the pre-orders. They want DLC. They're everywhere.
And one last thing, well, not necessarily one last thing in general, but one last thing I have on my list to link to pre-orders is the review embargo.
Oh, yeah.
Which, when you couple the review embargo with the lack of demos, the insidiousness that I was talking about earlier just becomes that much more of a calculated thing.
Now, I got to preface this by saying that a review embargo as a concept in itself is not necessarily a bad thing. It's a neutral thing, because the basic idea of an embargo is that everybody's going to publish their reviews at this time, in this day, so that nobody is left behind. So that IGN can post its mega review that's going to get 1 billion clicks at the same time as some schmuck like me that doesn't have that kind of reach. We're all getting into the game, our exposure of the game out at an equal level, at the same pace, That's the good part of them. But the bad part is,
that's how they started, more or less. And it's also useful to spike the awareness of a game. This is much more useful for like indies and stuff, but it's kind of difficult to post a review embargo on indie games, whatever. It's best to take the awareness wherever it happens. But the thing is that, much like how a pre-order started as a good thing, the review embargoes also became one of those a tool used to keep the potential clients, customers in the dark as to the quality of the game that they've pre-ordered.
Especially if the review embargo is after the release date.
Exactly. That should always light up all kinds of red flags.
And especially if the developer or publisher does not issue review copies, like Bethesda did at one point, but then decided, okay, this went badly, let's stop doing that. Actually, I couldn't think of it. They could probably save themselves some hassle by not sending review copies of Fallout 76. So I think that they gave up on that idea a bit too soon.
And they might have. I don't know about that.
The thing is that they had it in place when Doom was released, and Doom was amazing. So that having that no review thing, that sort of bit him in the ass with Doom, because that was a good game. It did, however, the opposite for Fallout 76, because that wasn't a good game. And
again, the quality of the game notwithstanding, the review embargo should be used as a means of, just like you said, some reviewers, some people actually have to want to spend the time and actually play the entire game to make a review, or some others just make first impression videos. There's an obvious difference in the amount of time each of them needs to basically spotlight the video, the game. So for those purposes, it makes sense. But then again, when you know you have a bad game and you place a review embargo on it, then that just adds on to the pile of, we're not really interested in making the game any good because we know it's shite. We just want to sell it as much as possible, as quickly as possible,
and then run away with the money and hope that nobody tries to get the money back from us with a return or.
And then we'll deal with the aftermath maybe.
And it also goes into the sometimes some publications, some influencers especially, are allowed to break embargo if they have the right messaging in their video, their review, their content, which is what Warner Bros. Has been guilty of several times with its games, especially the Shadow of Mordor ones. They would not give codes to people that were not previously shown to be loyal, let's say, to them, and those that did create content that was favorable would be allowed to publish it earlier.
Yeah, you have to expect those types of things happening.
Yeah, that's we also get exclusive reviews like that. There's a deal usually in the background for something like ad space or stuff.
Obviously, there is that, especially for the larger, places that deal with what it is our passion to do. And yeah, they do depend on those things.
Thankfully, there are some companies. I think it was Deep Silver or THQ. It was one of these Saints Row games. The review embargo was a month before release.
Okay.
So the reviews were out a month before the game, and the game was fun, so everybody enjoyed it.
Again, in that situation, they knew what they had. Because if it wasn't a good game, that review embargo would have been a month later, most likely. So yeah, it's a bad practice, dear listeners. It's a very bad practice, and we do not condone it in any means. I imagine someone or something might make the argument that backing projects on crowdfunding sites is kind of like pre-ordering.
In the case of something like a board game, it absolutely is, because then they're just trying to use the interest to figure out exactly how many of them they have to print, and have a figure for the company that does the printing, and just ship them out.
Yeah, but in that circumstance, it totally makes sense. In that circumstance, it's the pre-order for what it used to be, because they need to know how many boxes, how many things they print, they mold, they build. It's considerably more expensive. That's why board games in general are really expensive, especially recent ones in the past.
And they tend to have production runs. Like they don't have stock left over. They have a set number for the number of people that actually want to buy it. They don't have inventory.
So you can consider that to be pre-orders, but in the case of crowdfunding, in that circumstance, it's a positive. It's a means of actually ensuring what is usually indie developers that they can actually rely on you buying a copy of their game. Also, it should be noted that in general, when games, even video games, are up on crowdfunding sites, they will be at a discount when compared to their final price.
Yep.
So again,
even hardware, the first generation of Oculus Rift and the second one I think was $300, not the $800 it ended up costing when it was released.
Yeah, exactly. So again, in those circumstances, the crowdfunding isn't necessarily
the same as pre-ordering.
Pre-ordering. Yeah, I don't want it to be seen as you can put an equal sign between the phenomenon of pre-ordering that we've been talking up until now and what happens when you crowdfund something, especially if it's an indie something.
Yeah, because if you don't crowdfund it, it's not going to be ever made. There will be no
Exactly.
game.
It just won't exist at all, as opposed
Whereas
to
with a pre-order, nobody's going to be nobody's going to go out of business unless they're run by horrible people. If you buy the game a week after release instead of a year before it was released.
precisely. So do not pre-order, but do support indie developers on crowdfunding. Well, obviously, not everyone, not everything. If you consider if the developer has enough of a pedigree or whatnot, or you're interested in the project, then by all means.
And
But
hope they don't get bought out by Microsoft.
I don't know, man. I think that's it's not great. I don't think it's great, but that does offer them, at least for for the following, for the near future, it offers them some certainty.
All I'm saying is if Phil Spencer gets fired from Microsoft, everybody's going to have a bad time.
Exactly. That is a problem. You only have to look at what happened to is it Double Take?
Take Two, or which one?
No, not Take Two.
Double Fine.
Double Fine. Sorry. Watch their documentaries, their web documentary about when they crowdfunded, they kickstarted Broken Age, I believe it was. Yeah.
Yep.
And,
Double Fine Adventure.
Yeah, and in the around the middle of the documentary, they have to fire a lot of people just because they couldn't make it. They couldn't make the finances work.
Yeah, with Double Fine, there's a problem with the way that they started firing people, because they were also developing a game called Space DF9, which was successful. It was so successful that even before release through early access, they made back the investment from their investors, and they paid those people back. And then they fired the developer, because it was basically being developed by a single guy at one point, and they fired him. And the game was never actually finished.
Yeah, but that's on their side of things. I'm just saying, due to indie developers that make the jump into this very twilighty sort of middle of the. I mean, once you reach the level that Double Fine was, and later on Obsidian and In Exile, and also Larian, they are a very dying breed of game developer.
They were almost killed in the previous console era, because every game had to look amazing and budgets were going like to incredibly new levels. It was especially noticeable in Japan, because a lot of companies like Clover Studios shut down, which used to be there were a lot of kooky, strange games for PlayStation 2 for every kind of budget possible. And those just vanished to PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. They were replaced by either top-of-the-line, like multi-million-dollar, tens of millions of dollars AAA games, or indie games. Nothing in between. Games that cost $5 or games that cost $60. Nothing else. That was a tragedy. They sort of started building themselves up, usually through the crowdfunding system. That's how they reemerged. And as that sort of got into the fatigue area of its life, they've started to wind down a bit, and it's kind of sad.
Yeah, and the idea being that Obsidian and In Exile, they stopped being indies a while back.
Mm-hmm. The middle market, I would say.
Yeah, but they were nowhere near the AAA. They were maybe, I don't know, 2-digit A, I guess.
Yeah.
So they were in this middle market, as you say, as we call it, in which they didn't have the low costs of an indie operation that would allow them to continue doing their stuff, and nor did they have the capital backing of a AAA to again offer them security. So from that point of view, I think, at least for next year or maybe 2 years, it's gonna be nice for them to have that security.
Yeah, that will absolutely be really good for them, because they won't be in constant panic mode. They won't have to make 3D models for whatever game is going to be made in China as the next big MMO in a couple of years, and they're going to be paid next to nothing for their work. That's something that the Romanian studios do a lot. If you've played Heroes of Telara or the MMO made by Tryon, most of the models for that game are made in Romania by, I think it was Fun Labs. They mainly do outsourcing because they don't really have the backing to make their own games. I think they made the Cabela series for Activision, which was the $20 bass fishing game that you could buy at one point.
Bass fishing.
Yeah.
Okay.
There were a lot of these. That was part of the middle market, the spam of video games, if you will.
Well, yeah. Nowadays, it's more of the very of the crowdfunded niches, which is it's great that those existed. And I'm curious now. I'm wondering if so. First of all, I'm wondering for how long Larian is still gonna be by itself.
I think they're gonna be bought out by Microsoft soon, or Remedy will be. Them or Remedy.
Okay, so
I think Remedy.
Honestly, I think I would hope Paradox gets Larian, but
I'm not sure if Paradox can afford Larian, because Larian now has like 2 studios. It's grown. It's gotten a lot bigger thanks to the success of the previous 2 games.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm wondering if they In Exile and Obsidian now are out of the middle. They're close to they're. If you put them together, they're a AAA company now because they have Microsoft's backing, basically. So I'm curious if their spots in the middle market will be occupied by some new devs. I'm curious and hoping that happens. But seeing the market in general and the industry in general, I think it's going to it's finally approaching a bit of a lull. Not in the sense that there won't be any new games out, because a lot of them are being released and most of them are total asset flips and shite. But I just think that there's a bit of fatigue related to just the insane amount of variety out there, and at a certain point, the public, the audience will basically just focus on a couple of things or a couple of genres,
like PUBG, like the battle royale genre.
Exactly, like something like the battle royale genre, and stick with that for a while until that particular genre gets oversaturated, which we expect to happen next year. To be honest, there is going to be like at least 10 titles, 15 titles that are going to be.
Battlefield 5 will get its PUBG patch next year.
So there's that. And these are just the big ones, but I used to read. I don't know if they're in tests or if they're just in Asia, but there is a much better version of PUBG played in Asia called Ring or Rings of Elysium.
Yeah, it was released in Europe as well.
Okay, and then I remember reading about something, some dev who wanted to make like a 500 or 1,000 player type of thing.
Yeah, that was. I think that's nearing release as well. I forget what its name is, but I've seen it at E3. There was it was at the PC Gamer.
These are just a couple of the things that are off the top of my head. So next year, expect battle royale, super saturation to begin.
It sort of already started. I mean, we did have the mother of all desperate moves, which was Bosky Studios, Cliff Bleszinski's studio. I forget his name, Radical Heights. Oh yeah, I think I actually forgot to put Radical Heights in the top 7 desperate moves by game developers.
I don't think it's in there actually because I don't remember.
I forgot about it. I should have wrote it. That was a move of pure desperation because that game was released without even textures on most of the buildings. But it did have cosmetics in it already with monetization because they needed the money. Damn, I should have made that show.
Yeah,
I can't patch shows. See, that's the problem with video.
Yeah, I'm just talking about like super saturation next year. But even in the battle royale stuff genre, there is at least one other title that's a bit different, and that is Hunt Showdown.
Mm-hmm.
That isn't exactly battle royale, but
it's
it just does,
PvE, PvP.
exactly. But it just does something very different in terms of atmosphere, especially in terms of atmosphere and theme, which is quite interesting. It's still not there yet, bugs and not greatness,
but it is keeping Crytek alive.
Yeah, it does have. It also does have potential to be a different type of battle royale-ish experience, as opposed to whatever that insane 1,000 people's. Can you imagine 1,000 people server? The clusterfuckness.
I actually start to wonder what would happen if PlanetSide 2 just made a server where nobody's in the same faction, because that would be the result. They could conquer the genre by just making a server where nobody is in the same faction and everybody's killing themselves with jets and stuff.
If they they just need someone to listen to that particular clip of you saying that, and you just made them some money.
Mm-hmm.
Us over here with all of the free ideas.
Yeah. Some of them are bad though, so don't try all of them.
Oh yeah, just so yeah, kids, just don't pre-order stuff.
Yeah, it's detrimental to your health.
Yeah, it's detrimental to your health, detrimental to the health of the gaming industry overall, and it's just not. That just doesn't make financial sense.
Mm-hmm.
For you as a consumer, I mean, for me, it doesn't make financial. I don't know. If I pay money, I like to have the thing I pay money for. Yeah. After also, I pay the money.
It's important to note that for us, $60 is a lot of money. For some people, it may not be.
Point taken. But again, I don't know. It's just if that's the thinking that goes behind pre-ordering or most of it, then there is no chance of us using the reason and all the arguments that we've been going through all of this episode. There's nothing we can say to fix the problem.
Mm-hmm.
But I do hope that maybe at least some people see through the dog shit, the marketing dog shit of what pre-ordering is, and just wait. It's just about patience, people. That's all it comes down to.
Well, yeah, the games industry has pretty much done all it can do to erode the idea of patience, with everything being an instant reward, especially in the Skinner box type of reward based video game progression.
I don't know. Maybe we'll have to talk on a show, make an episode about what patience used to mean in terms of gaming.
Yeah. You're playing Diablo right now again, Diablo 1, and you don't have the ability to run in the dungeon, so you understand patience.
Oh yeah, that's just nothing. I mean, it would be cool to move a bit faster to the dungeons, but thankfully they're not that when they designed the dungeons, they are procedurally generated to an extent. They're basically made out of kind of like puzzle pieces that just re-randomize themselves. But there are a bunch of handwritten rules as to what can generate at what distance from what other object. That's just because they had problems with how they drew the lights and stuff, basically how they drew the shadows. So generally, it's the distance between going from one level to another isn't that large. So you can generally just go up and down relatively quickly in case you don't have a Scroll of Town portal with you. So it's not that bad. But in terms of actual patience, I did play StarCraft 1 on 8 megs of RAM. So there is that.
I understand your pain. I was playing it on Windows 95 without the latest DirectX patches and could not see my resources.
Those not so golden times, yes, but not necessarily golden. Yeah, so that's about. I think that's about it for this episode. Just please don't pre-order stuff. Don't pre-order our episodes either.
Yeah,
either.
They're terrible. God, why would you pre-order this?
Although do help Unicom on Patreon if you can. That'd be great.
Especially since, we mentioned that the price of the stock price of Activision Blizzard went down. The price of Steam is now at 30 cents. And it's, oh boy, it was $4 in April.
Ooh. What halcyon times those were.
Yeah. Well,
and for those not in the know, Steam is a cryptocurrency that
it's sort of like Reddit, but upvotes our money, like a couple of cents, and they add up over time. And when they were worth something, it was good.
So there is that's a separate thing. That doesn't. It's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
If you do want to financially help us, just go on the Gaming HD Patreon and see if you can pitch in a couple of bucks there.
Say, do you have your Patreon? You should set one up.
As for me, what you can do to help me is just go to my channel and watch some stuff, maybe even subscribe, but watching stuff would be the most helpful thing because I need watch time in order to actually get my videos monetized. So
again, because they used to be, but
they used to be up until February when they put the kibosh on. We can talk about YouTube policies. Once every 3 months because we'll
have a different episode because they initially wanted to be the next Netflix, and then now this week they decided, okay, we're not going to be the next Netflix. So they reversed the decision of having gated content. You got to see it free. The stuff that's on premium.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's fucking YouTube, man.
Yeah. Stability.
I'm not just gonna. We're not even going to start with that.
Okay, so do you have anything coming up on your channel?
No, I don't. Not yet. I will hopefully be purchasing a new motherboard this coming week. And hopefully it arrives by the end of the week. We don't know yet. We'll see about that. I live in a town where you can't just go to a place and buy a motherboard. I have to order mine online. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the same with Braille, sadly.
Yeah. But I am working on reviews. I'm working on some video ideas, more so for the next year, I think. In the meanwhile, though, if we still have people listening to us, we are considering doing episode 30 of GameTales as a live stream with honest to goodness webcams.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how good mine will be because it's pretty old, but we'll see about that. And you just let us know in the comments if that is something you would be interested in checking out, and maybe also tell us what time zone you live in, just as a general idea, so that
so we know when to make the actual live stream. So a time that's very usable to all of you.
Yeah, to most of you, because if it's in the middle of the night, that's not gonna happen. I don't know how to tell you, not gonna happen, guys. But if it's something more manageable, we'll definitely do some stuff, and also suggestions for what the live stream should be about. My idea is we should play something and just randomly bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
But we will see about that. We still got several weeks to go till then. What do you have coming up next week on the Gaming HD channel?
Well, first I have to apologize for missing 2 shows this week, or last week. I think it's the week before the show airs, because I had some tooth surgery and some molar removed, and I was unable to speak for a couple of days. So you didn't get a short history of Romanian game development, sadly. You may get it next year. And there was no Strife video, so that's going to be saved for next year as well. So next week, or this week, you got to get Gaming Codex about Collector's Editions, since you already talked about them a bit.
Okay.
You're going to have a top 7 of things I have been very wrong about. You're going to hear some stuff about there being an actual good Dark Souls game.
Lol. Okay.
Because one of the first videos I made was Severance, the only actual good Dark Souls game.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Okay.
In my defense, there was no Dark Souls 3 back then. Then you're going to have a video about building the perfect keyboard, which is an adaptation of an article I wrote on Steemit that actually earned me money back then. Those days. Then on the history show, there's going to be some driving with Interstate 76.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That is quite historic. That's true.
A driving game built on the engine of a mech simulator. That is amazing. And because the history show with Beer.game, with 50 years of video games that ended, I'm going to have things I screwed up in the video series show. So with all the stuff that should have been better made.
Yeah, you should do that. The extra credits people usually make like an extra video after they're done with the series, just correcting things they didn't get into it or they got wrong.
Yep.
Because that happens.
And then it's going to be a plain Alva game called Heimrek, which I got a key for. I have no idea what it is. I haven't played it yet. Either that or Leisure Suit Larry, the one that just came out. We got a code for that as well. Hopefully YouTube won't ban it.
The really not great one from what I hear.
Well, I've heard it better compared. I've heard it favorably compared to other games that have come out recently, and that are considered asset flips.
Okay.
So somebody actually called it on Twitter a better game than Fallout 76. So I've got there to start from.
Well, at a certain point, considering that's not necessarily a difficult. That's not a high threshold to achieve.
Yeah.
So apparently. So we'll see. Well, it's good that. So here's a weird question. Do you or do you not have Christmassy stuff scheduled for the end of the year?
Well, I think I did as many Christmassy stuff as things as I could in the past 2 years, but I do have a Christmas themed game. I think I have found the perfect Christmas game. It's the Die Hard. Die Hard, being a Christmas movie, it's the Die Hard of video games in that sense.
Okay, I'm gonna look forward to that.
It's a game that I really like, and it's actually a really strange mix of a game that is. It's in a genre that sort of died out a bit because of Resident Evil.
Okay,
its sequels
survival
became
horror one?
Yeah, sort of. It wasn't survival horror when it started. It sort of looked like one, but it was more of an RPG. And then because of Resident Evil, it became something else a bit. And, then it got weird. Really weird and sad. But the original is still a very, very fine game.
Okay, so it's good. It's good. Looking forward to checking out all of those videos. I think we're gonna call it an evening.
Yep. Goodbye, everybody.
See you next time.